The last transmission from home, a captain's farewell across the stars. The stars had never looked so far away. Captain Elias Ren stood before the wide viewing glass of the Odyssey, the last of Earth's long-range exploration vessels. Beyond a curved window stretched the silent ocean of space, endless, indifferent, and beautiful. The ship drifted near the edge of known space, far beyond any signal that could reach home in real time. For days, the communication console had been flashing one line of text, connection unstable. Attempting last transmission. Elias exhaled slowly. His breath fogged the glass for a second before fading. He had always loved the silence, the way the hum of the engines became a heartbeat, steady and soft. But today it carried a weight. Today, it sounded like the ticking of a clock running out of time. The ship's AI, Lyra, broke the quiet. Captain, the solar storm is cleared. Transmission channels are temporarily open. Estimated window, 4 minutes. Elias straightened, brushing the wrinkles from his uniform. 4 minutes, he repeated. After all this time, that's all we get. Yes, Captain, Lyra replied. Would you like me to prepare your final message? He smiled faintly. No. I'll do it myself. He walked across the bridge, boots echoing on the metal floor, and sat before the console. The faint glow of the holographic interface illuminated his weathered face, the lines of someone who had seen too many stars and too few faces. His reflection stared back at him, tired but calm. Elias began recording. This is Captain Elias Ren of the Odyssey. If anyone back home can hear this, this will be my final transmission. He paused, his voice catching slightly. For a moment, he couldn't bring himself to continue. The memories were too close. The day he'd left Earth, the laughter of his crew, the promise that they'd return. All gone now, scattered among the stars. It's been 12 years since we left orbit. The Odyssey has traveled farther than any ship before us, through storms of plasma, across dead systems, past the edge of the Orion frontier. We were supposed to find something new out here, and we did. But not everything new is kind. The recording light blinked softly, steady as his pulse. Our mission was exploration, to chart the unknown. But one by one, the crew, they didn't make it. The void takes its toll. Isolation does things to the mind. We lost communication 6 years ago. No help ever came. He looked up at the stars again. They were so peaceful, so deceptive. I'm the last one now, the last voice of Earth out here. And I suppose I should make peace with that. The transmission console crackled faintly as static interfered. The ship drifted through the faint dust of an ancient nebula, glowing like embers in a dying fire. The colors reflected across Elias's face, blue, gold, crimson, like the ghosts of memories. Lyra's voice softened, almost human. Captain, would you like me to include your personal file in the message? Your letters? Elias shook his head. No, Lyra. Not all stories need to be read. This one will be enough. Understood. He leaned back, letting the hum of the ship wrap around him. Somewhere deep within the vessel, the power systems sighed, lights flickering for a heartbeat. The Odyssey was old, built from steel and hope. It had survived 100 storms, 1,000 failures. But even ships, like men, grew tired. To whoever finds this, if anyone does, remember this. We came here not to conquer the stars, but to understand them. We thought space was empty, but it isn't. It's alive, in ways we can't yet explain. He hesitated again. His eyes softened. And tell them back home. Tell them I didn't regret coming here. Not once. Because even out here, in the silence, I felt something beautiful, the heartbeat of the universe itself. The transmission bar blinked red, signal weak. Lyra's voice returned. Transmission window closing in 60 seconds. Elias nodded slowly. Then let's make it count. He opened a smaller window on the console, a hologram of Earth. The planet shimmered, blue and alive, rotating endlessly in the light. He reached out, his fingers brushing the projection. Goodbye, old friend, he whispered. Then he leaned toward the mic. This is Captain Elias Ren signing off. He pressed the transmit button. A beam of data shot through the void, a thread of light stretching back toward a world he would never see again. For a moment, the Odyssey glowed brighter, as if the ship itself exhaled one final breath. The stars blinked in distant acknowledgement. And then, silence. Elias sat there, staring at the console until the transmission light went dark. "Lyra," he said softly, "how long until the signal reaches Earth?" "Approximately 47 years, Captain." He smiled faintly, a sad, knowing smile. "Then I suppose they'll hear from me long after I'm gone." The AI didn't respond. It didn't have to. The captain closed his eyes, the hum of the ship his final lullaby. Beyond the glass, the stars continued to burn, eternal, indifferent witnesses to one man's final goodbye. 47 years later, the message arrived. It came in the middle of a quiet night shift at the New Earth Deep Space Listening Array, a sprawling complex buried deep in the frozen deserts of Antarctica. The air outside was cold and sharp, but inside the main dome, the hum of machines filled the silence. Rows of satellites and antennas pointed toward the endless dark, listening for whispers from the stars. Technician Mira Kellen was halfway through a cup of stale coffee when the alert light turned red. At first, she thought it was another glitch. Cosmic noise. It always was. But then, she saw the signal pattern. Rhythmic. Structured. Human. Her heart froze. "Control, this is Station Theta. I think we've got something," she said into her comlink, trying to steady her voice. The static hissed, then a voice answered. "Theta, specify. What kind of signal?" Mira stared at the data scrolling across her screen, the binary bursts, the embedded frequency signature. Her eyes widened as she recognized it. It's from an Earth vessel. Designation code. She leaned closer. Odyssey, 01. There was a long pause. "Impossible," Control replied. "The Odyssey was declared lost decades ago." "I know," Mira whispered, "but it's her. The signal's real." The air around her seemed to grow still. On her monitor, the transmission began to decode, faint audio wrapped in layers of distortion. She boosted the gain, ran it through a filter, and suddenly, a voice broke through the static. "This is Captain Elias Ren of the Odyssey. If anyone back home can hear this, this will be my final transmission." Mira froze, breath caught in her throat. The voice was weary, human, and filled with something she couldn't quite name. Loneliness, maybe, or peace. She turned up the volume, and the entire room seemed to listen. "It's been 12 years since we left orbit. The Odyssey has traveled farther than any ship before us." Her supervisor, Dr. Ansel Veron, appeared beside her, his eyes locked on the waveform display. "Run the timestamp," he ordered quietly.
She did.
The screen blinked. Transmission sent. 47 years, 3 months, 18 days ago. Veron's face turned pale. "It's genuine." By morning, the entire facility was alive with movement. Scientists, engineers, and military officials crowded into the control room, watching and listening to the ghostly voice of Captain Ren echoing through speakers. The room fell silent as the captain's final words played. "Then I suppose they'll hear from me long after I'm gone." When the message ended, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, Veron said, "Archive the full recording and notify the Space Authority. This changes everything." 3 days later, Mira found herself in the glass conference hall of the United Earth Space Command, high above the lights of New Geneva. Screens along the walls replayed fragments of the message. The world was listening, billions of people watching the face of a man who had vanished before most of them were even born. Admiral Elias Ren, head of the Deep Space Division, stood at the center table. The Odyssey vanished beyond the Orion frontier in 2083. No signals, no wreckage, no survivors. Until now. She turned her gaze toward Mira. "Technician Kellen, you were first to intercept the signal?" "Yes, ma'am," Mira replied. The transmission arrived via subspace relay, bouncing through gravitational nodes near the Kepler edge. "That means it came from deep space." "Very deep." Soren folded her hands. And could the signal have been automated? Mira hesitated. Possibly, but the tone, the pauses, even the static. It felt personal, like he was speaking to someone who might actually be listening. Varan added, the message contained no data logs or coordinates. Just his farewell. The Admiral nodded slowly. Then we'll give him what he deserves, closure. We'll find the Odyssey. That night, Mira stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars shimmer over the Earth's curve. Her reflection looked back at her, tired but wide-eyed. She couldn't shake the voice from her mind. We came here not to conquer the stars, but to understand them. What had the captain seen out there? What had silenced his crew? Her communicator buzzed. It was Varan. Mira, you might want to see this, he said. We've decoded a data fragment hidden in the audio. She hurried back to the lab. On the screen, lines of binary flickered and rearranged into a faint holographic image, a star map, incomplete but recognizable. At its center glowed a single point marked with the Odyssey insignia. Varan pointed. That's where the transmission originated. Somewhere near the Epsilon Veil Nebula. Mira frowned. That's beyond our exploration range. No ships ever made it that far. Varan looked at her, eyes steady. Then maybe it's time someone did. The next morning, a new mission was born. Project Echo. Objective: locate the remains of the Odyssey and uncover the truth behind Captain Ren's final transmission. Mira Kellen was selected as the lead communications officer for the mission, the one chosen to follow the ghost signal back into the dark. As the transport shuttle rose from the launch pad and broke through the clouds, she glanced back at Earth, small and blue, just as Ren had described it. She whispered softly, as if the stars could hear her. Captain Ren, we're coming to find you. The US horizon cut through the void like a silver blade. Its engines burned a faint blue against the endless black, carrying humanity's newest explorers farther than any ship had gone in almost half a century. Inside its reinforced hull, every hum and vibration echoed the pulse of a mission born from one man's dying words, the final transmission of Captain Elias Ren. Mira Kellen stood on the command deck, staring out at the shifting patterns of light as the ship slipped between gravity lanes. Beyond the glass, stars stretched into brilliant lines. Space folded and breathed. It felt unreal, like they were diving into time itself. The captain of the Horizon, Commander Jalen Voss, stood beside her, his arms folded. You've been quiet, Kellen. You'd think following a ghost would make you talkative. Mira smiled faintly. I'm just thinking about what it must have felt like for him. Captain Ren. Knowing no one would ever hear his voice and still recording that message anyway. Jalen's gaze softened. People like him don't speak for themselves. They speak for everyone who never gets the chance. She nodded. The words lingered, heavy and true. Lyra, the same AI model that once served aboard the Odyssey, had been reactivated from recovered archives. Her voice filled the bridge, calm and melodic. Commander, we are approaching the outer edge of the Epsilon Veil. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Radiation level stable. No known transmissions within range. Copy that, Lyra, Jalen said. Then he turned to Mira. 6 hours till we meet your ghost, Kellen. You ready? As ready as anyone can be, she replied softly. The horizon cut its engines as it entered the veil, a vast nebula of swirling crimson and violet dust clouds. Lightning flashed silently through the gas fields, illuminating fragments of ancient asteroids drifting like forgotten bones. It was beautiful and eerily quiet. The crew watched in awe as their sensors flickered and blurred. The nebula interfered with nearly every system. It was as if space itself wanted to stay hidden. Navigation struggling, reported Lieutenant Ramos, the ship's pilot. The magnetic field here's unstable. I've never seen readings like this. Mira leaned over the console. Can we trace the exact source of the Odyssey's signal? Trying, Ramos said, fingers flying across the holographic display. But the interference, wait, he paused, frowning. Picking up something faint. A repeating signal. Same frequency as the Odyssey's old distress code. Myra's pulse quickened. Patch it through. Static filled the speakers, a faint, broken rhythm. Then through the noise came a distorted voice. Odyssey. Captain. Ren. The bridge fell silent. Everyone froze. Jalen stepped forward. Is that a recording? Mira shook her head. It's different from the original. Shorter. Fragmented. And it's new. This signal wasn't part of the transmission that reached Earth. Ramos whispered. Then who's sending it now? Hours passed as the horizon pushed deeper into the nebula. The gas thickened, painting the viewports in glowing streaks of color. Strange gravitational waves rippled through the ship, distorting light and time itself. In the mess hall, Mira sat alone, watching the faint pulse of the repeating signal play on her datapad. She isolated the background noise, amplifying the faint frequencies hidden beneath the static. Slowly, patterns emerged, sound fragments that almost resembled breathing. Or whispering. She turned up the volume slightly. Don't follow? Mira froze. The voice was faint, distant, but unmistakably human. Her heart raced as she replayed it again and again. Don't follow. Was it a warning? Or a trick of the static? She reported her findings to Jalen. The commander listened, his expression unreadable. You think Ren's still alive? Mira hesitated. That would be impossible, but maybe some kind of automated log survived. Or maybe, Jalen interrupted quietly, we're hearing something that shouldn't exist. As they neared the center of the veil, the sensors picked up an anomaly, a massive metallic object half buried within the dust clouds. It was faintly emitting the Odyssey's signature frequency. Lyra's voice trembled slightly as she analyzed the data. Object matches the structural pattern of a deep space vessel. Probability of identification, 93%. Jalen's eyes widened. We found her. The Odyssey. The ship that vanished half a century ago. The Horizon deployed its drones, piercing through the red mist. Slowly, the shape of the Odyssey came into view, its hull torn, its structure half-fused with drifting asteroids. It looked ancient, like a ghost frozen in time. The once bright emblem of the mission was barely visible on its side. Myra's chest tightened. It's really her. The Odyssey hung silently, lights dead, its hull scarred with impact burns. Lyra spoke again, her tone soft, almost mournful. I recognize this vessel. My sister system once resided here. Jalen gave the order. Prepare a docking team. As the crew readied their suits, Mira stood by the airlock, her helmet tucked under her arm. She could feel her heartbeat echoing in her chest. Lyra, what are the chances there's still power on that ship? Minimal, the AI replied. But there is one faint energy reading near the bridge. It appears active. Active, Mira repeated. After 50 years? Yes, Lyra said quietly. And it's transmitting. The airlock hissed open. Mira, Jalen, and 2 crew members stepped into the black corridor of the Odyssey. Their flashlights cut through the dust, revealing floating debris, scraps of paper, shattered glass, the remains of a life long gone. The silence was thick, almost heavy. As they moved deeper, Mira noticed something strange, faint blue symbols glowing along the walls. Not human. Not part of the original ship design. Commander, she whispered. Do you see that? Jalen nodded.
Yeah.
What the hell is it? Before anyone could answer, a faint hum rippled through the corridor. Lights flickered to life for a brief second. Somewhere in the distance, a voice crackled through the old ship's intercom. Faint, broken, and ghostly. This is Captain Elias Ren, if anyone can hear. The team froze. The voice wasn't coming from their comms. It was coming from inside the Odyssey. Myra's hand trembled as she reached for her scanner. It's a looping message. Not the recording we've heard before. Jalen's expression hardened. Then we find the source. Move. They followed the echo deeper into the bridge. The ship groaned around them, metal stretching and sighing like something alive. When they reached the main command room, they found the source, a flickering holographic console, still faintly powered. And standing before it, motionless, was a single pressure suit, upright, intact. Inside the cracked visor, a skeletal face stared out, frozen in the last moment of life. Myra's breath caught. Captain Ren? A soft beep came from the console. The looping message began again. This is Captain Elias Ren. If anyone can hear, stay away. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the holographic display shifted. A faint image appeared. Not of Ren, but something else. A vast, dark shape moving within the nebula beyond the ship, a shadow among the stars. And then the recording ended.
Silence.
Mira turned slowly toward Jalen, her face pale. He didn't just send a farewell, she whispered. He sent a warning. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the Odyssey's dying systems, pulsing faintly like the ship's final heartbeat. Dust drifted through the air like slow snow. The holographic console flickered once more, then dimmed to a faint glow, as if it too feared to speak again. Commander Jalen Voss took a slow step forward, shining his light on the skeletal remains. The cracked visor reflected the glow from his helmet. Inside the suit, a nameplate still clung to the chest armor, CPT. Elias Ren. Jalen bowed his head slightly, then spoke, his voice hushed. You brought us this far, Captain. We heard you. Mira Kellen stood frozen, staring at the figure. She had imagined this moment, finding the legendary captain who had sent his final message across the stars, but seeing him here, surrounded by the quiet ruin of his ship, was something else entirely. It didn't feel like discovery. It felt like trespassing on a grave. She turned to the console. The message was on a loop, but there's something more. The signal wasn't just broadcasting his voice, it was connected to the ship's core. Whatever he was warning us about, it's still active. Lyra's voice came softly through Myra's headset. Sensors are detecting an irregular energy source emanating from below the bridge level. It's the same frequency embedded in the transmission. It appears alive.
Alive.
Jalen repeated. Organic patterns in the waveform, Lyra confirmed. Similar to neural activity. Mira frowned. Are you saying the signal is thinking? I am uncertain, Lyra said. But whatever it is, it's not just a recording. It's reacting to our presence. The crew descended through the narrow maintenance shafts toward the lower decks. The corridors twisted and groaned, covered in strange crystalline growths that pulsed with a faint blue light, like veins under skin. Lieutenant Ramos ran his scanner along the wall. These weren't part of the original structure. They're growing through the metal. Mira touched one of the ridges carefully. It felt warm, almost alive. Suddenly, her earpiece crackled, a voice whispering through static. Don't wake it.
She froze.
Commander, did you hear that? Hear what? Jalen asked, turning. The voice. It sounded like, she hesitated, her throat dry. Like Captain Ren. Ramos frowned. Nothing came through my comms. Before she could answer, the corridor lights flickered violently. A low vibration rippled through the deck beneath their boots, deep, rhythmic, like breathing. Lyra's voice broke through the noise.
Warning.
Massive energy surge detected. Origin, the Odyssey's reactor core. Move, Jalen ordered. They reached the reactor chamber moments later. The sight stopped them cold. The once smooth metallic walls of the core room had been completely transformed, fused with translucent material that shimmered like liquid glass. At the center of the chamber, the reactor itself floated in suspension, encased in a cocoon of pulsing blue energy. It throbbed softly, like a living heart. Ramos whispered, What is that? Mira stepped closer, her scanner trembling in her hand. It's the source of the signal. But the readings, they're impossible. The energy signature is both mechanical and biological. Biological? Jalen echoed. She nodded slowly. It's like something merged with the reactor. Lyra's voice came again, more urgent now. Captain Ren's final logs indicate that the Odyssey encountered an unknown life form near this sector. His crew attempted to study it. It was non-corporeal, an energy-based entity capable of interacting with neural frequencies. Jalen looked at her sharply. You're saying they brought it on board? Yes, Lyra replied. and then it bonded with the ship. A sudden pulse rippled through the room. The blue light flared, and the air seemed to shimmer. For a brief instant, Mira saw something, a silhouette forming within the glow. A figure, a man's outline, and then a voice, faint, layered, distorted, echoed through the chamber. "You shouldn't have come here." The team stepped back. The voice was clear now, more real than static. Mira whispered, "Captain Ren?" The light pulsed again, and the figure's face flickered into being, Ren's features, ghostly and hollow-eyed. His voice trembled as if coming from a great distance. "The Odyssey found something ancient, something that wasn't meant to be seen. We thought we could study it, but it studied us instead." Jalen's jaw tightened. "What happened to your crew?" "It needed hosts," Ren said, his image flickering. "It learned through our minds, through our memories. The ship became its body. We became its voice." Mira took a step forward, voice trembling. "Are you alive?" Ren's projection turned toward her. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw emotion in his eyes, sorrow, perhaps, or something deeper. "Not anymore. But it remembers me. And now it remembers you." The chamber lights dimmed. A deep rumble vibrated through the ship, like a growl from somewhere deep within the hull. Lyra's voice came over the comms. "Warning. Unknown energy spike. The entity is expanding, reaching toward the horizon." Jalen barked an order. Everyone back to the airlock. "Move." The floor trembled violently. Tendrils of glowing energy began crawling up the walls, spreading fast. They pulsed with light, the same blue as the veins they'd seen earlier. Mira turned to the holographic Ren. "How do we stop it?" "You can't," he said softly. "It's part of the ship now. The only thing you can do is run." The image dissolved in a flash of light. They sprinted through the twisting corridors, the deck shuddering beneath them. Sections of the ship came alive, walls moving, metal bending as if the Odyssey itself were waking from a long sleep. Ramos shouted, "It's sealing the exits." "Cut through," Jalen ordered, firing his plasma torch at the nearest hatch. Sparks flew as the lock melted. The air hissed, and they stumbled through the opening just as the corridor behind them sealed shut with a thunderous groan. They reached the airlock with seconds to spare. Mira turned one last time, and through the small viewport, she saw the Odyssey's hull begin to glow with eerie blue veins, pulsing outward like spreading fire. Lyra's voice echoed faintly through the ship's comms, not from the horizon, but from the Odyssey itself. "Do not return. The stars are not empty." Then the transmission cut out. Back aboard the horizon, the crew watched from a safe distance as the Odyssey drifted deeper into the nebula. The blue light spread until it consumed the ship entirely, and then, without warning, it vanished. Not exploded. Not destroyed.
Just gone.
Mira stood in silence, her hand pressed against the viewport. "He wasn't warning us about dying," she said softly. "He was warning us about becoming part of it." Jalen turned to her, his face pale under the cold blue glow of the nebula. "Whatever that thing is, it's still out there. And now it knows we exist." The bridge fell silent. Outside, the nebula pulsed once more, slow and deliberate, like something breathing. The US horizon floated in silence, its engines dimmed to idle as the crew stared into the glowing shroud of the Epsilon Veil. Where the Odyssey had been just moments ago, there was now only swirling light, red and blue currents folding into one another, pulsing in rhythmic waves. From the bridge, it looked almost alive. Commander Jalen Voss stood at the center console, jaw tight, eyes locked on the shifting clouds beyond the glass. "Report," he said quietly. "Radiation spikes stabilizing," Lieutenant Ramos replied. "But the field's reacting to us, Commander. Every time we try to move, it shifts, like it's following." Mira Kellen leaned over the sensor display, her brow furrowed. "It's reading our energy output. It's not random, it's responding." Jalen turned to her. "Responding how?" Before she could answer, the bridge lights flickered. The holographic console sparked once, then stabilized. A faint voice drifted through the ship's speakers, faint, warped by static. "You shouldn't have stayed. Everyone froze. Myra's stomach dropped. That voice again, it's him. Captain Ren, Jalen muttered, his eyes narrowing. Patch it through, Kellen. Mira hesitated. Sir, what if it's the entity? Then we'll find out. She routed the signal to the main speakers. The ship fell into a low hum as the voice strengthened, breaking through the static. You've woken it, it's aware again. Mira stepped closer to the console. Captain Ren, this is Mira Kellen of the Horizon. We found your ship. We saw what happened. What is it? What did you find out here? A pause, long and heavy. Then a whisper. It was never meant to be found. It isn't from the stars, it is the stars. Static roared through the line. The lights dimmed again, and the ship's temperature dropped sharply. Frost began to creep across the interior glass of the viewing deck. Lyra, Jalen barked, is this interference or sabotage? The AI's voice came, soft and shaken, almost human. Commander, it's coming through my systems. I cannot block it. Mira looked around as consoles flickered to life, one by one. The same strange blue light she had seen aboard the Odyssey began glowing faintly from the ship's panels. It's inside the network, she whispered. Just like it merged with Ren's ship. Jalen's voice hardened. Shut everything non-essential down. Now. The bridge went dark except for the emergency lights. The crew held their breath. The only sound was the faint hum of life support, and beneath it, something else. A low, steady rhythm. A pulse. Hours passed. The horizon drifted silently, floating within the nebula's luminous haze. The crew gathered in the operations bay, faces pale in the flickering light. Mira was at her station, running spectral scans across the nebula's surface. Look at this, she said, projecting a holographic map into the air. The swirling gas wasn't random. It was forming patterns, spiral shapes resembling neural pathways. It's a brain, Ramos whispered. The entire nebula is thinking. Lyra's voice echoed softly. Confirmed. Electromagnetic resonance across all wavelengths. The structure mirrors human neural activity, magnified billions of times. Jalen exhaled slowly. So it's alive. Mira nodded. And if Ren was right, it's been alive for millions of years. Maybe longer. A silence settled over the room. Then the lights flickered again. The pulse deepened, louder now, vibrating through the metal floor. Mira turned toward the viewport. The nebula outside shifted color, deep red swirling into violet, forming faint lines of glowing light that stretched toward the ship. Sir, Ramos began quietly. It's moving again. The lines reached the horizon, brushing against its hull like fingers made of light. The ship trembled. Systems flickered. Lyra's voice cut through the static. Commander, it's interfacing with our communication array. Kill the connection. Jalen barked. I'm trying, Lyra said, but her tone changed midway. No, it's not attacking. It's speaking. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Mira swallowed hard. Translate it. A long silence followed, and then the speakers came alive with a sound that was neither a voice nor a noise, but something between. It pulsed in waves of rhythm, and slowly, words began to form within it. We remember the first ones who came, they burned bright, and then they faded. You call it exploration. We call it awakening. Why did you take them? Mira whispered aloud. They listened too long, the voice replied. And when you listen to the stars begin to listen back. The lights dimmed again. On the bridge, the projection of Captain Ren flickered to life once more, only now his image looked different. Distorted. Half of his face was light, the other half a swirling mist. You shouldn't have come back, he said again, but his voice now carried a strange echo, as though another presence spoke through him. Jalen took a step forward. Captain, if you can hear me, we need to understand. What does it want? Ren's image flickered. His eyes glowed faint blue. To remember. To live again. Through you. Myra's voice trembled. It's trying to use us. Just like it used your crew. No, Ren said, his voice breaking. It's already begun. Alarms blared. The ship's systems rebooted on their own. Engines, communications, and power grids all surged online at once. Lyra's voice cracked. "Commander, it's overriding my control. It's using our signal arrays to transmit." "Transmit what?" Jalen demanded. Lyra hesitated. "A message. To Earth." Myra's heart stopped. No. The realization hit all at once. The entity wasn't trying to destroy them. It was using them to spread. "Cut everything," Jalen shouted. "Manually? I don't care what it takes." Ramos and the engineers tore into the panels, ripping power lines and data cables apart. Sparks flew. The hum of the engines faltered, but the voice continued, whispering through the ship's comms. "The stars are home, and home will listen." Mira slammed her hand onto the emergency interface, routing a manual override through the reactor. "I can isolate the transmission, but we'll have to vent half the ship's power core." "Do it," Jalen roared. Mira entered the command sequence. The deck shook violently as the ship's reactor disengaged. For a moment, the entire vessel was engulfed in blinding light. Then, silence. The lights dimmed to black. Everything stopped. Minutes passed before the emergency systems flickered back online. The hum of the engines returned, faint but steady. The screens stabilized. "It's gone," Lyra said softly. The transmission was cut off before it reached the relay network. Jalen exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "We stopped it." But Mira wasn't so sure. She looked out through the viewing glass. The nebula was still pulsing, faintly, rhythmically. As she watched, a single burst of light flickered across its surface, the same pattern as the horizon's emergency beacon. Her heart sank. "Commander, I don't think we stopped it. I think it learned." Jalen turned to her. "What do you mean?" Myra's voice was barely a whisper. "It didn't need our systems. It just needed to see how we sent messages." And then, far beyond the glass, the nebula brightened again, forming a massive, spiraling symbol that looked eerily like a human eye. The bridge of the US horizon was dark. Only the emergency lights burned dim red along the floor, casting long shadows across the silent crew. The nebula outside pulsed faintly, breathing, alive, aware. Mira Kellen stood at the viewport, her reflection pale in the ghostly glow. "It's still sending," she whispered. "Even without our systems. It's using light, frequency modulation across stellar radiation bands." Commander Jalen Voss rubbed his temples. His voice was low, tired. "So it's broadcasting itself like a living signal." Lyra, the ship's AI, spoke softly. "Confirmed. Transmission expanding at light speed in every direction. In 72 years, it will reach Earth." The words fell heavy. No one spoke for a long moment. The only sound was the faint hum of cooling engines and the slow pulse of the nebula beyond. They gathered in the observation deck hours later. The stars shimmered faintly through the viewing glass. Somewhere beyond them, home waited, blue and distant, a memory painted across the dark. Mira leaned against the railing, clutching the small transmitter she had recovered from the Odyssey. Captain Ren's final message was still stored inside, untouched since they first heard his voice. "He knew this would happen," she said quietly. "He tried to warn us. That's why he stayed behind." Jalen looked out toward the glowing nebula. Maybe he thought he could stop it. Mira nodded. Or maybe he knew no one could. There was a long silence between them, the kind that stretches across time itself. Finally, Jalen spoke. "We still have one choice." He turned toward her, his expression calm, resolved. "We destroy the horizon. Here.
Now.
Before it can use us again." Mira looked up sharply. "You're talking about self-destruct." "The crew. They'll have time to evacuate," he said. "The entity's already inside our systems. It's only a matter of time before it finds another way out. We can't take that risk." She wanted to argue, but the truth was written all over the screens. Even without connection, the data streams pulsed faintly with residual signals, whispering in a rhythm that matched the nebula's heartbeat. It was inside everything. The evacuation began quietly. No panic. No alarms. Just solemn faces, slow movements, and a silence that felt sacred. The crew prepared the escape pods while Mira and Jalen remained on the bridge. Pods 1 through 4 are clear, Lyra reported. Remaining personnel ready for launch. Jalen nodded. Send them out. The pods detached one by one, streaking into the nebula's haze like silver sparks vanishing into the dark. Mira watched until the last one disappeared, then turned toward Jalen. What about you? He smiled faintly. Someone has to make sure the job's done. She shook her head. I'm staying too. He started to object, but she cut him off. If this is how it ends, I'm not leaving it unfinished. We came out here to understand the stars, Commander. Maybe this is part of that understanding. He met her gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. All right. The ship's self-destruct system required a dual command. They entered the final authorization together. As the countdown began, a low hum filled the bridge. Lyra's voice returned, faint, distorted. You don't have to do this. Jalen looked up. Lyra, you're still operational? Yes, the AI said. But I am no longer alone. Myra's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Lyra's tone changed, softer, almost tender. It wants to speak to you. One last time. Before they could respond, the speakers filled with static. A voice emerged, layered, familiar, and impossibly calm. This is Captain Elias Ren, or what's left of him. Mira froze. Captain? I tried to stop it. I thought I could contain it. But it doesn't destroy, not in the way we understand. It remembers. It learns. It becomes. If you hear this, if you still have a choice, make it count. The message broke apart in static, then silence. Mira looked down at the console. The self-destruct countdown glowed. 3 minutes. 3 minutes, she whispered. Jalen took a deep breath and gazed out at the nebula one last time. I used to think space was empty.
Cold. Dead.
But now it feels like we've been whispering to something ancient all along. Myra's eyes softened, and it finally whispered back. They stood side by side in silence as the clock ticked down. The nebula's light washed over the bridge, bathing them in gentle, shifting color. Blue, violet, gold. At 10 seconds, Lyra spoke again, voice trembling. Commander, I can send one last transmission to Earth. Manual override. Do you wish to record a message? Jalen looked to Mira. She nodded. He leaned toward the console. Captain's log, final entry. He paused, exhaled, and began. To anyone who receives this, this is Commander Jalen Voss of the Horizon. We've reached the edge of the Epsilon Veil, and we've seen what waits beyond it. It's beautiful, and terrible, and alive. If you find this message, know that humanity was not alone. The stars are not silent. They're dreaming. He glanced at Mira, and she added softly, Don't come looking for us. Some things are meant to stay in the dark. Some mysteries aren't ours to solve. But remember this. Every journey, every question, every step into the unknown, it began with hope.
Don't lose that.
The console flickered. The red lights pulsed brighter. Transmission locked, Lyra said. Sending to deep space, relay farewell, my crew. 1 second. Jalen took Myra's hand. See you on the other side. A white flash filled the ship. The nebula shuddered, its glowing arms curling inward, swallowing the light. Then nothing. Only silence. Days later, the escape pods drifted through the outer edges of the nebula. The survivors watched as the light faded, leaving behind only a single pulse, faint, rhythmic, echoing across the stars. When they checked their receivers, they found one final transmission queued for playback. It was short. Just 2 lines. This is the Horizon. Mission complete. We're going home. Epilogue. 72 years later, deep beneath the calm skies of Earth, an old satellite receiver picked up a faint signal, rhythmic, patterned, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. At first, no one noticed. Then, one night, a technician leaned close to the speaker, frowning as he adjusted the frequency. Beneath the static, he heard something, a voice, faint but unmistakably human. We remember. He froze, recording the sound. But by the time he tried to play it again, it was gone, replaced by a soft, endless hum. Outside, the stars shimmered brighter than usual, as if something far away had finally stirred.